Really pleasure to see you. We had possibilities perhaps with a lot of you, to meet during different occasions during, yeah.
You probably have to
Okay.
two of them. Yeah, that's for the camera.
Okay,
that's
so,
why.
so this is not working, Okay, now it works. So really pleasure to see you. And really thanks a lot for your presence here today. And of course, it's a pleasure to welcome you to the first implementation dialogue on defense and focusing on simplification. Let me start with an observation, which perhaps there is no need to expand. And observation is very simple. Peace in Europe is no longer a given. And of course, I will not expand too much on threats which we are facing. All of you know very well. Last week, President Ursula von der Leyen held a strategic dialogue on defense with a round of 20 companies, and here was very clear agreement on crucial role of the European defense industry in safeguarding European security, and second, that industry must be capable of responding at scale and at speed. Definitely also, we must also learn from Ukraine defense industry development which we are supporting during the war. A phenomenal increase from €1 billion production capacity in 2022 to €35 billion production capacity last year. They learned how to ramp up defense production after war came to their country. We need to learn those lessons before in order to avoid war. On our side, we know that we face serious gaps in our defense capabilities. This is the price of chronic underinvestment and lack of efficient spending in our military capabilities during the last decades. Second, United States is disengaging from Europe. That is again very clear. And here, new administration has been very clear also in their statements. It will take maybe next decade, but we need to prepare ourselves also for that development. So there is no other choice for us but to take more responsibility for our own defense and to do it as quickly as possible. So that is why we are therefore in a very important moment in the evolution of European defense, and the European Commission and Council is stepping up to this challenge with a white paper and Readiness 2030 plan. Now we are concentrating on implementation of those proposals, and implementation is crucial. We are focusing on three most important areas: on analysis and consolidation of defense needs and demand, on ensuring industrial supply with special attention to issues related with security of supply chains, and on creation of the proper conditions for the availability of needed financial resources, specifically with safe loans and possibilities to use national escape clause. And perhaps you know that today, because of this dialogue, here are good news from Coreper on safe loans. So we expect that things will move very rapidly with that very important program. So as I said, we are pushing implementation in all those directions. First of all, with a surge in defense spending. Second, by working together with NATO and member states on bringing individual capability gaps into the panoramic picture of aggregated demand. We hope that we shall have such a picture before June summit. And we expect our European industry to ramp up its production in order to supply what is needed for our defense. And we're ready to support industry with clear visibility of aggregated demand, with assistance to bring larger scale and longer term joint contracts, with our assistance to industry for joint development of new products, with assistance to overcome security of supply chains challenges, by supporting also innovation and modernization of defense industry, and by diminishing and removing bureaucratic obstacles to the expansion of production. Today, implementation dialogue focuses on one specific aspect of white paper: the Defense Omnibus Simplification proposal, which the Commission will table in a couple of weeks, as, if I am correct, on June 17. It will take an extraordinary effort to get European defense readiness to a level that will deter any armed aggression on European soil, and we know that the current regulatory environment is not ready for such an objective. We cannot expect that Putin will postpone his plans of aggression until we have made all our bureaucratic procedures ready for defense. So it is imperative that we enable member states to invest and procure through a simpler framework fit for achieving defense readiness by 2030. Also, the European defense technological and industrial base should be enabled to accelerate the ramp-up of industrial production through simplification, cutting red tape and setting aside regulatory barriers. And focusing on Commission proposal for a defense omnibus, we have widely consulted member states and industry representatives. In our public consultations, we received more than 180 inputs from member states and industry. This is an important source of feedback on what needs to be done. To ensure we do not miss any feedback, we believe that today's discussion with all of you, with significant European Union industry players, is an ideal opportunity to ensure that your concerns are heard. Today, we will have two sessions in our discussion, modeling what will be proposed in the omnibus proposals. In the first session, we will have a discussion on possible simplification in the European Union defense legislation and defense programs. Member states really need to massively invest in defense capabilities and procure defense systems to close critical capability gaps. That is why there is a need to simplify defense-specific legislation, the directive on defense procurement, and the directive on intra-EU transfers of defense products. For example, we intend to give more flexibility to member states in common procurements, more flexibility as regards framework agreements, and we intend to facilitate innovation procurement. Fluidity of intra-European Union transfers is also key for cross-border collaboration and for security of supply in the European Union. There is also room to make the European Defence Fund more flexible and less burdensome for its beneficiaries. With respect to the second session on non-defence legislation and programs, the aim is to make sure all our EU legislation will facilitate defence readiness. Here we are referring to any EU legislation which may impact the defence industry. So far, we have reflected on bringing forward proposals in a number of areas. First of all, taking your inputs as a basis for steps which we are proposing. First of all, addressing restrictions that defence industry face in relation to EU environmental, climate and chemical legislation. We are looking into fast-tracked permits in order to reduce permitting deadlines for defence industry investments, such as new plants, extension of existing plants and testing facilities, as well as for member states' defence readiness activities. We are also looking into chemical legislation, for example, REACH directive, to ensure clarity for defence readiness activities and production investments. We are also looking at competition rules and sustainable finance, in particular how the objective of defence readiness can be taken into account by the Commission and how reporting can be further simplified for defence companies. However, we must keep in mind that there is a need to achieve a careful balance between the objective of these rules and defence readiness. We should strive to maintain this balance, but I want to stress that this is not a closed list. Indeed, we are eager to hear your views here. And in conclusion, the challenges we face, from geopolitical tensions to emerging technological threats, demand a unified, agile, and robust response. That is why your feedback today is so important. And I'm looking forward to today's discussion, and thank you for your valuable input. No need.
And requirements that are not necessarily defense oriented. So, in terms of housekeeping rules, important. We'll have the questions prepared here. I will repeat them, of course.
For years, and everybody, I think, understands the importance of a balance on existing resources. And it's a pity that on very
Thank you very much, Mr. Commissioner. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to exchange with you.
Chapters, but I can assure you